Meantime, let's bring in John. GOP presidential candidate Will Hurd is here, patiently waiting in studio as there's a lot of news breaking this afternoon. Good to have you here.
It's always a pleasure.
You've had a chance to listen to Jake Sullivan there ahead of the president's upcoming trip. And by the way, news from Karine Jean-Pierre, he will be wearing a mask after the First Lady tested positive. They're urging others to get their vaccine, update their vaccine doses. We'll have more on that coming up. Meanwhile, Jake Sullivan just a moment ago, the U.S. has not seen North Korea supply large amounts of munitions to Russia. North Korea, he said, will pay a price for providing any weapons to Russia for use in Ukraine. There was a lot of questions about the relations in these countries, between these countries. What was your response to what you just heard there from the White House?
Well, here's what I've learned. For most of my adult life, I've been involved in protecting our country. I stopped terrorists overseas. I prevented nuclear weapons proliferators from bringing dirty bombs in the country. And I stopped Russian spies and Chinese spies from stealing our secrets. And here's what I've learned seeing our enemies up close and personal. Your friends should love you and your enemies should fear you. And this is one example of the North Koreans taking this aggressive step to provide equipment to the Russians is a sign that the North Koreans do not care what we think or what the international community thinks. But it's also a sign that things aren't going the way Vladimir Putin planned. The fact that he's having to buy equipment and material from North Korea. Usually it's the other way around. The bulk of the munitions that the North Koreans have gotten over the years, a lot of that has come from Russia. So this shows a sign of how Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine is not going the way it should be going. But there's also an opportunity. Look, I've made it very clear we're in a new Cold War with the Chinese government. The Chinese government does not want to see a North Korea at war with South Korea because that's going to lead to millions of North Korean refugees on the Chinese border. So there's a possibility to work with the Chinese against the North Koreans in this case.
Very interesting.
Will, you represented Texas when you were in Congress. You just came back last week from 3 days on the border. Wondering what you saw there, because the Washington Post reports that there's a record number of people involved with family units crossing the border. 91,000 people were associated with family units during the month of August. And when you take a look at the overall arrests coming across the border illegally, in August, it was 177,000 compared to 132,000 in July and 99,000 in June. So what did you see when you were there?
Well, what I saw is law enforcement, a low morale with our law enforcement because of bad policies coming in Washington, D.C. Those numbers are only going to get higher when the weather gets better. It's averaging 110 degrees in a lot of places in Texas, and you're seeing those levels. The way we solve this problem, and now other states around the country are starting to see the issue that we've been dealing with in Texas and Arizona has been dealing with for the last 3 or 4 years. This is a policy issue, and it starts with stop treating everybody as an asylum seeker. If you do this, people that are abusing the asylum process are impacting the people that actually have a legitimate reason to have asylum. And so we stop doing that, you're not going to have the 5.5 million plus people that have come into this country illegally. And each one of those folks that have come in have spent about $10,000 on a human smuggler. That's an average. That's about $55 billion with a B. You add on fentanyl and drug trafficking, that's another $40, $60 billion. So that is, when you add those together, that is more than all the McDonald's and Starbucks around the world by a factor of 2. This is how big this problem is, and it starts with we need better leadership. Our border czar needs to realize that going to a taqueria in El Paso is not a border trip. You need to be engaging with all of law enforcement, federal and state, talking with landowners about the problem. We need to fire the current Secretary of Homeland Security. We need to treat the smugglers, both human smugglers and drug traffickers, as the terrorist groups they are. And then we need to treat fentanyl like a weapon of mass destruction. It's killing 109,000 people a year. These are the things that we can be doing to solve this problem.
Not to mention the real economic consequences, all of this that are happening right now. According to our own government data, we just dug up these numbers overnight. This was revealed, a staggering figure revealing 1.2 million U.S.-born workers lost their jobs last month in this country and have been replaced by 688,000 foreign-born staff as the number of migrants flowing over our borders continues to surge. This is happening right now. Those are government statistics.
Look, it's absolutely happening, and part of the issue, we need to address the root causes in the places where this is coming from. And so, historically, most of our illegal immigration has come from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. For a fraction of the federal budget, we can address issues there like violence, lack of economic opportunities in those countries, and solve that before they get to our border, which is significantly more expensive. These are some of the issues and ways that we can address this problem. And all of this that I've just outlined does not require Congress. This requires leadership in the White House to change how they're implementing existing law.
Will, I want to ask you about the candidacy in general. You did not qualify for the first debate. There's no indication that you'll qualify for the second debate. The RCP average has got you at 0.3%. Larry Hogan, former governor of Maryland, is calling on candidates like yourself to drop out, help consolidate the field. How do you make the case to keep going?
Well, look, I appreciate Larry's perspective. He was a good governor. For me, my goal has never been to peak today or tomorrow. The goal is to peak before the first election. We have the resources, and people are excited about what we're trying to do. I recognize I'm a dark horse candidate, but this is what makes America great, that we can have these competition of ideas. The Republican Party is supposed to be the big tent party that has this competition. So we're going to continue to work towards hitting those debate requirements. If your viewers want to help, go to herdforamerica.com and donate at least $1 in order to meet those requirements. But the goal is to talk about these issues that are affecting people, to talk about things like border security. I have more experience on the border than everybody else combined. These are some of the issues that we're trying to work on.
Really interesting. Will Hurd, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate having you here.
Always a pleasure.
All right.